Welcome to round 6, the final round of the GT4 Championship hosted by Apex Online Racing. Moving into this round, Daniel Fernandez is the first season champion for GT4 for Tier 2. His victory last time out at Misano secured him enough points to move completely clear of the field. However, the rest of the table is still open. Currently, Jean-Paul Ribeiro is in second place, but just 4 points behind him is Michael Bird, so second and third place to be decided at the next round here at Suzuka. And the battle between 4th and 5th is also extremely tight. Tom O'Connell and Phil Sims of BRT against Igor 55 and Dominik Brzezinski of Lack of a Team Name. Just a handful of points separating those two teams. In 6th place is David Zapata, who could cause an upset for those drivers ahead of him if he scores well and they score badly. In 7th, Katalin Sazu, who with a 50-point deficit to Zapata in 6th, seems unlikely he'll be able to make up places. In 8th place, it's Voodoo and Andreas Ahn of IMSA Performance, who are just behind Sazu, so there's a battle there between 7th and 8th on the table. And right behind them is Gianpedro Castella and Daniel Montero of JP Racing in the BMW, just 2 points behind the IMSA Performance Audi. And rounding off the top 10, it's Daniel Martinez of Porsche Motorsports and his Porsche 718 GT4 with 115 points. Moving on to the manufacturers table, moving into this last round, Chevy Camaro continue to lead from the front. They've been there all season. In 2nd place, it's Porsche. In 3rd place, it's Aston Martin. And then the only real two teams I think in touch with Ginetta in 4th and BMW in 5th. Then there's quite a gap down to the Audi, Mercedes, KTM, Alpine and McLaren. Let's join Danny Fernandez on his pole setting lap of the Suzuka circuit, just going down the start-finish straight, and when he passes underneath the banner overhead, that's the start of the lap. Coming towards T1, very high-speed corner and very difficult to overtake in GT4 cars, the two equivalent on pace. Carrying as much speed as possible as we move into the S's. One of the best parts of the track. Very difficult to get right, but very rewarding. Coming out of the S's, go around the Dunlop curve. Again, another corner where if you can't carry too much speed, you'll just drift wide and straight off. And it's the approach to the two Degnas. Degna 1, try and catch as much curb as you can. And Degna 2. Underneath the overpass, the course going overhead. It's one of the only figure of 8 courses on the calendar. Then approaching the hairpin. Try and carry as much speed as possible through the hairpin and then accelerate away. Follow the track round to the right. And it's the approach to the world famous Spoon Corner. Another very challenging corner to get right. You can carry a lot of speed in, but carry too much and you'll go wide. And it's round onto the main straight, or the back straight. Flat out. On the approach to one of the most exciting corners on any track in the world, 130R. And round we go. And it's a short straight up to the chicane. And straighten up as quickly as you can. Round the final corner and back onto the start-finish straight and underneath the barrier at the end. Not the first one, but the second one to complete the lap. And that puts Danny Fernandez into pole position. But following qualifying and just prior to the main race, there was some exchange of views of drivers in the chat window. So going back, looking at qualifying, you can see Jean-Paul Ribeiro here trying to set a pole time. And right behind him is Danny Fernandez, who's finished a time. And bearing in mind, it's the responsibility of the driver behind to make sure that they've got enough space to do a qualifying lap. This could be seen as gamemanship. Danny Fernandez closing right up on Jean-Paul, possibly putting him off on his lap. Whilst there's nothing strictly in the rules against this sort of behaviour, it's not really the sort of thing you'd expect from drivers trying to compete fairly. But perhaps where that may have crossed the line and may well end up with the stewards, if we get towards the end of the lap, remembering that Jean-Paul Ribeiro still on the lap, Danny Fernandez overtakes him on the inside, spoiling his lap for certain, getting in his way at the chicane, and then to make matters worse, pulls straight into the pits. So not really the sort of behaviour we would be expecting from what is the GT4 champion. They've already won the championship, and they've set a fastest lap. Jean-Paul Ribeiro's no threat whatsoever, so why spoil another driver's lap? Perhaps one for the stewards to decide. So you join us as a very wet Suzuka for the final round of the GT4 Championship. Daniel Fernandez on pole position following his fastest lap in the much drier qualifying session that just preceded this race. Cries of dismay, I think, all down the field when they realised that this was going to be quite a wet race, and the drivers on the line having to make a decision, a snap decision, over what tactics to take, what type of tyres to take, and it'll be interesting to see, given the rain indicated was just light rain, whether they've gone for full wets or slicks with the pressures increased to try and deal with the track conditions. So Fernandez leading the field round on the formation lap. Fernandez now the first season champion for Tier 2 in the GT4 class, taking that title last week with another victory at Misano. So 4 victories out of a possible 5 for Fernandez, and a second place sealed him the championship. In second place, following qualifying, is Tom O'Connell in the BRT Ginetta. Tom and Phil Sims currently lying 4th in the championship, and right behind them in the championship, it's Igor 55 and Dominik Majewski in 5th place. So it's very, very close between both these teams. And the finish for this event is definitely going to decide who's 4th and 5th in the championship. And similarly, tonight's result is going to determine whether Michael Bird here in the BRD Chevrolet or Jean-Paul Ribeiro, who qualified down in 11th, is currently lying in 2nd place. So the result between Bird and Ribeiro vital, and Ribeiro already on the back foot down in 11th. Daniel Martinez is in 10th place on the Drivers' Championship, so just a good result tonight here, really, Daniel will be looking for. Uros Huzjak in the Audi of Lenti Racing qualified down in 6th. Denis Deutsch, along with Daniel Zapata, have elected to start the race from the pits, possibly due to the weather, maybe playing it safe, but they will start right at the back of the grid, but will certainly avoid any trouble. Andreas An in the Audi qualified in 8th. Katalin Sazu, who's got a penalty from the stewards following incidents in a previous round, has got a stop-go to serve as soon as the race commences. Steve Cowie, Revo Sport GB, down in 10th place. Jean-Paul, we've already looked at. Pedro Mota, down in 12th. João Pedro Castella, 13th in another BMW. Eugene in the Alpine, qualifying reasonably well in 14th. The Alpine's proving to be a very difficult car all season. Steve Bezic in the Beeswax Racing. Aston Martin in 15th. Paul Martin, Go Ginetta in 16th. And Zapata in the pits. So they pulled away. And it's Fernandez being challenged by Tom O'Connell in the first corner. Fernandez loses the rear end a little, and Bird's onto the grass. Bird already onto the grass. Will he drop back into the clutches of Ribeiro? Remember, Bird and Ribeiro fighting for 2nd place in the championship, but no, he's back on the track. Bird's managed to keep it together, remains in 4th place, but Tom O'Connell and Igor are into 2nd and 3rd respectively. Going further behind, looks like they've remained pretty much in order. It's a BMW, then the Porsche of Ribeiro, and more BMWs. But no major offs I can see, so a good clean opening lap by all the drivers. With Andreas An of the IMSA Performance right behind the other Audi of Husjak. Audi. Andreas having a look around the outside. Oh, goes wide, goes under the grass, goes right across the grass. That looks like to be coming into Spoon. And dropping right down the field. Everybody's going through. Rejoins right alongside the Beeswax Racing. That's Eugene just behind. I'd suggest that looks like Andreas will be tucks in behind the Beeswax Racing. So that'll put Andreas probably into 14th place, I think, when the computer settles out. It's not a great start. Grass would have been very slippy. Yep, 13th place for the Audi, but it's going straight past the Beeswax Racing. So straight back into 12th place to try and recover that position. But again, the Audi goes off. Straight off. And this time it really will be to the back of the field. Possibly pushing too hard to try and get back up as soon as possible. But the Audi proving quite a handful on the opening laps of a very wet Suzuka. And the KTM of Dennis Deutsch working its way up through the field, having elected to start from the pits. Now moves into 12th place. Cars line astern behind the KTM. Zapata also trying to come through the field. Look to be trying to make a move on Paul Martin in the Go-Go Ginetta. Zapata looking for a way past Eugene next. But Zapata looks too far away to be able to make an attack unless he gets a good drive. And he has. Moves away. Zapata passed the Alpine before the start of the main straight. And will be eyeing up the Aston Martin in front. See if he can get better drive and better speed again. Approaching 130R. Would have thought there'd be no way through on 130R. And there isn't. Possibility for an attack in the chicane, and Eugene goes off track there in the background. Nope, no attack through the chicane this time. So Sazu only has 3 laps from the start of the race in which to serve the 30-second stop-go penalty, which will have been awarded by the stewards as a result of an incident in a previous round. So we're already 2 laps in, so I think Sazu's going to have to pit. Oh, he's off, goes wide into the gravel trap, so not only is a penalty going to have to be served, but he's losing time. Coming up towards Spoon, so about half a lap to go before going to have to pull into the pits. Sazu past Ribeiro. Ribeiro looking like he's not enjoying his trip out in the Porsche in the rain at Suzuka. Struggled a little in qualifying, whether that's due to struggling with setup or due to the incident we saw just prior to the race. Unknown, but Ribeiro well down the pack, and at the moment Bird looking good to take second place in the Drivers' Championship. Coming round towards the pit stop entrance. So Sazu through the chicane. Expect to see it peel off into the pits to serve the penalty. Many drivers also struggling with prep time for this event. The GT3 season has commenced in earnest. It was round 2 earlier in the week, leaving little time to get ready for the final round of a GT4, especially if you know you're not in a strong position of a championship. Most of these drivers, though, will know Suzuka quite well. Apex Online recently held 12 hours of Suzuka So a number of these drivers will have competed, which would have meant a lot of laps. And it looks like Andreas is going to just drive straight past the Ginetta on the main straight. Audi showing better speed. Perhaps the Ginetta bouncing off that rev limiter that people were talking about. So Paul Martin pushed down into 16th place. Andreas Ant takes 15th. And after a very difficult start to the GT4 season, it looks like Eugene has got to grips with the Alpine. The first time we had a wet race, he complained he was just spinning every other corner, but holding on well here at Suzuka in the rain. Still trying to find a way past the Aston Martin. Andreas Ant closing up close behind. And it looks side by side, the Alpine and the Aston. And it looks like Eugene's through on the inside. Through Denga 1 and Denga 2. He is. That's a place made up. And the Audi of Andreas Ant is trying to have a look as well. Aston Martin not looking like it's handling well at all. Only 4 laps in. Have that team made a bad choice in terms of tyres for the conditions, which look to be getting worse? Normally on this type of weather you'd expect the track to be drying, but it looks to be getting worse, and the amount of spray coming off the cars is increasing. Aston Martin struggling mightily on Spoon to just stay on a racing line. You can see the rear end stepping out. Andreas Ant really close to the Aston Martin now. He looks to the right and then looks to the left. But again, unlikely to be able to make a pass work on turn 1. It's a high-speed corner. The Alpine slowly looking to pull away, but you can see the Aston there sliding across the track as the rain continues to fall. Still looks too far back to be able to make it count. Just coming underneath the overpass up towards the hairpin. The hairpin usually a favourite passing point. And not this time. Or is it? As the Aston Martin just run out of grip. No, it's still in front. As they come round. Moving up, heading up towards Spoon. And the Aston Martin a little bit to the left there. And the Audi on an inside line. Looks like the Aston Martin just ran out of grip on Spoon. And the Audi are able to get up the inside. So the conditions too difficult at the moment. Oh, Motor's got a drive through. That must be for track limits already into the race. So not sure what's going on with Motor. The Aston Martin into the pits. It is the wrong tyre choice. And that looked to be going too quick as well. That was a very fast entry into the pits. And not a good race already for the Beeswax Racing entry. Wrong tyre choice. Meant they were losing places. And to try and stop the rot, they've come in to change tyres, presumably to wets. Meanwhile, Motor has a drive-through, so a number of drivers having big difficulties. Sazu has already had to serve a 30-second stop-go. Bezik's in the pits to change tyres. Motor's got a drive-through for some reason. So, at least 3 cars very much on the back foot. So the drive-through for Motor to be served. And it was too fast an entry for the Aston Martin. Things go from bad to worse. Not only have they had to do an extra pit stop for tyres, just 6 laps into the race, They've got a stop-go penalty to serve. That's going to put them well beyond the back of the field. And with the evenness of pace across the field, most likely out of this race altogether. It can be very difficult to come back from that and get a decent place in. Dennis Deutsch closing in now on Steve Cowie. This would be 7th place if he's able to get past the BMW through Denga 1, approaching Denga 2. KTM gets a much faster speed through Denga 2 and is alongside already, going underneath the overpass, coming up towards the hairpin. That BMW's speed counts, but they're still side by side into the hairpin. Dennis going to do the over and under. He does. They're alongside coming out the hairpin. But that BMW is quick at acceleration. The KTM not quite able to keep up. Has to slip behind. And then comes out again as they approach Spoon for the inside. Out breaks the BMW and moves in front. Dennis Deutsch from the pits. Moving into 7th place. Just coming down the start-finish straight now and into lap 9. Still Zapata closing in slowly on Ribeiro. Now just 0.4 of a second between them. Zapata starting from the pits. Into turn 1. You've got to wonder if perhaps there's a setup or tyre issue with the Porsche, because Jean-Paul normally very quick. Oh, and he loses it. Loses the rear end. He's on a spin. Goes right round onto the grass. And that is not great. That's not what Jean-Paul needs for the championship, because he's trying to catch Bird, who's currently in 4th. Long way across the grass, losing lots of places. And a final round of a GT4 championship not going Jean-Paul Ribeiro's way. He'll have to wait till the next sector to find out how many places he just lost with that one spin in just the wrong place. Down in 10th it shows at the moment. Did the BMW get through as well? A big gap. 13th place for Jean-Paul Ribeiro. Showing 24 seconds back to the Ginetta. Again, that might settle out a little bit. Yeah, it's only 6 seconds back to the Ginetta. Well, Jean-Paul Ribeiro's afternoon gets from bad to worse. Right down the field, outside the top 10. Meanwhile, Bird up front is closing right in on Igor. So the points difference between 2nd and 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, well, it's going to be a huge advantage to Bird based on the current positions if they go all the way through to the end of the race. So still, Bird trying to find a way past Igor. They've been this close since the race began. Bird trying a different line there, suddenly jumped to the left, going into that part of the S's. And that's the final part of the S's. They're coming up towards Denga 1. Bird's got the better position there for Denga 1 on the outside line, carrying more speed, forcing Igor to brake. Bird's through Denga 2, underneath the overpass. Will Igor try and make a move back, coming through the hairpin? Igor needs that place, needs to catch Tom O'Connell and pass him. Can't be affording to drop further behind. But it's not going to happen. Bird is through and trying to pull away. So the Aston Martin of Beeswax Racing on lap 9. We've just seen Ribeiro have a nightmare and drop down to 13th. But not a bigger nightmare as the Beeswax Racing are having. Been in the pits once to change tyres. And into the pits again to serve a 30-second stop-go. Putting them right at the back of the field. 16 seconds to the nearest opponent, so huge gaps to make up. Where is that motor just in front of them? The computer's saying it's a 16-second gap, but that looks to be right in front. So his motor having huge difficulties too. And that is indeed, the BMW was off to the right then, off the track, so the Aston Martin moves through and somewhat miraculously manages to make a place up despite all the disasters that have ensued over the start-finish line. We'll see where positions perhaps settle out. Still showing motor in front. Nope, it's through. The Beeswax Racing is ahead of motor. The motor into the pits must be having some significant issues with their vehicle. I don't know what's happened to the BMW, but it's having a complete nightmare. Not a great night for the BMW team. And up ahead, the BMW has gone off. Another BMW going off the track. It's been a trait of this race. So Zapata slides through. Cowie slips back to 9th. And Zapata's move through the field following his start from the pit lane. Not as effective as Dennis Deutsch. Dennis now into 6th. Next target being the Audi of Husjak. We've seen the Audis be quite a handful as well, so both the BMW and the Audis proving very difficult in wet conditions at Suzuka. Dennis just seems to be basically waiting for a right moment to sweep through. Seems to carry a lot more speed through the corners compared to the Audi. Oh, the Audi goes off. Again, the Audi sliding off the track with seemingly too easily. I don't know what went on. But it's hard to blame driver error when the car seems that twitchy. So Dennis breezes through into 5th place. Audi's reputation for twitchiness being demonstrated at a wet Suzuka. You just keep seeing them just seemingly just spearing straight off into the wilderness. Ribeiro off again, just cut to him. I'd made it to 12th, having slipped down to 13th earlier, but still having problems. And that's Andreas Ahn in front. So where's the Ginetta? Too far back. So Ribeiro does hang on to 12, but another driver having a nightmare in Suzuka in a German car. We've seen BMWs, Audis and Porsches all struggling at Suzuka in the wet conditions. John Paul pushing on, trying to catch up to the Audi of Andreas Ahn. And given the way we've seen the Audis, how much of a handful they are on this track, Jean Paul would probably do well just to push. Andreas maybe unable to push back in fear of what the car might do next. Jean Paul looks to have a good inside line, but it is, I believe, 130R next, and that's a brave corner to take on the inside. They both get through. Andreas Ahn, though, speed will be severely compromised, having to brake so much. Take 130R wide, and it works. Ribeiro's through. The Audi goes backwards. And there's another place made up, but it's not what Jean-Paul Ribeiro would want. Originally was in 9th. Had a big spin coming out of turn 1. Put him all the way down in 13th. And 15 laps in, it's only just recovered to 11th place. So with Igor now, currently 5th place in the Drivers' Championship, really needs to be closing up to try and get past Tom O'Connell, where instead appears to be slowly slipping backwards. Dennis Deutsch now, not too far away. Dennis starting from the pit lane and really moving up through the field very well indeed. And the KTM is right in there now. Over the course of one lap, it's closed down a 2-second gap to nothing. Coming down the start-finish straight, KTM's on the outside. tucks back in to try and get a toe. KTM has a reputation of being a very difficult car to handle with an awful setup owing to the balance of power, but in the hands of both drivers in the GT4 Championship, it's torn through the field. And again, Dennis just drives straight past the Chevrolet going around turn 1 and into the S's, and just seems to be just driving away. So the KTM is clearly a very good car if you can get to grips with its handling. So we're on lap 19, coming down the back straight towards the chicane, just about to go through 130R, and Tom O'Connell has closed in to within a fraction of a second of Fernandez in front, and has a quick look at the inside for the chicane. Is it close enough? Not quite. Fernandez does come across the front, but it's all clean out the chicane, and the Ginetta dives into the pits. Time for the pit stops to commence, and that looks a very fast approach into the pits there. Tom in second place, just what they need to secure that 4th place in the championship. Fernandez elected to stay out. The other Ginetta of Go Ginetta just finishing its pit stop and pulling away. Driver change now for them, I believe. So when it crosses the pit lane entry, yeah, it changes to Mamadou. Well, Tom handing over to Phil, I believe, during his pit stop. Pressure will be on Phil Sims to get back into second place. Take that 4th place in the championship. Car looks to be down off the jacks. How far down were they going to slip from the pit stops? Oh no, it was too fast an entry to the pits. The BRT Ginetta has got a stop-go penalty of 30 seconds. And Fernandez, quite frankly, he's off the hook. Tom was within a fraction of a second of the Aston Martin, but now we'll have to serve a penalty pit stop of 30 seconds, which will put them right down the field and may well put their 4th place in the championship into jeopardy. That mistake on the entry into the pits may well have cost BRT very, very dear indeed. So lap 23, Eugene closing in on Sims. Sims just come out of the pits. And of course, Sims and O'Connell in a battle against Majewski and Igor. Majewski and Igor currently in P4. Sims and O'Connell currently in P7. Lack of a team name can score enough points over the BRT Racing Ginetta, and they will move into 4th place in the overall championship for season 4, pushing down BRT into 5th. So everything to play for here in holding Eugene back. And the Ginetta goes wide. Surely that's an opening for the Alpine. They're side by side. Now Eugene's in front. And that's cleanly through. The Audi of Voodoo and IMSA Performance right behind the Ginetta. And could the championship be slipping away? That looked very wide there as well for Sims. Indeed, he's dropped back into 9th place. And that might not be good enough. 9th place will only pick up 31 points. And 4th for Majewski and Igor will pick up 56. But Eugene cleanly away now. Oh, no, goes wide. Eugene well wide there, just as we cut to him on the chicane. And that looked like Morphy just ahead. Drivers having swapped for the Beeswax Racing. Maybe Eugene was following him too closely, but he's retained that position. Voodoo following on the start-finish straight, and Sims just in the background. If the cars finish in the position they're in now, with Majewski and Igor in P4 and Sims and O'Connell in P9, the difference is 25 points, and that will leave, I think, 2 points difference on the championship table overall. So 9th is definitely the worst they can finish, but if they move forward one position, Igor, lack of a team name, Majewski, they'll get 62 points, and that will be enough to move them over BRT in the Ginetta. So a very tight battle between 4th and 5th place on the Drivers' Championship. The battle for 2nd and 3rd does look to be over. We're at 26 laps. There's still well over 10 laps to go, so still plenty of time for everything to change, but Ribeiro stuck in 10th place, closing in steadily on Sims. The gap was 20 seconds, now it's 16, but it's still a mountain to climb, and Bird is in 2nd place, and the difference in points there, too vast. As going into this round, they're only 4 points away from each other. Driving up towards Spoon, having just been through the hairpin. Audi still wriggling around in these difficult conditions, and that's sliding badly. That's gone. It's into the grass, heavy into the barriers. Sims goes through, and he'll appreciate that. But Voodoo, some damage to the front of the Audi, and the Audi's been behaving like that all day in the rain. Rear end just getting away from the drivers all the time. So Sims makes back 1 place now. Is into 8th place. 8th place being worth 35 points. Whereas Majewski and Igor in 4th get 56 points. So that difference currently will mean that Sims and O'Connell will retain for 4th place in the championship. But will Sims stay in that position? Everybody's going off in this weather, so anything can happen. And on lap 29, still around 10 laps to go probably. About the same time as Sims is trying to get a place back from Voodoo and try and secure that position in the Drivers' Championship for their team. Bird looks to be going a little bit wide there on the hairpin, and that will allow Dennis Deutsch to close right up. The KTM proving pretty effective at Suzuka in the rain out of all the cars in the field. Dennis will be sniffing blood given any opportunity, and again goes very wide going through Spoon. The KTM right up the inside. Side by side coming out the exit from Spoon. So it's a drag race up to 130R. The KTM just doesn't have that amount of speed. The Chevrolet goes through in front, but goes a little bit wide again. It's on the curbing, just about gets away with it. KTM right behind. Again, KTM having a look up the inside, going through Denga 1. And Bird was on the wrong line there. Won't be carrying good speed into Denga 2. So the KTM is all over him. Deutsch looks to the right. Tucks back in, coming up towards the hairpin. And Bird having to fight hard to keep the KTM behind him. Again, Deutsch positions Bird, so there's a slight opening on the inside, but KTM has the manoeuvrability but doesn't appear to have the speed in a straight line. Side by side, going up towards Spoon, and he's forced a mistake. Bird went very wide there, caught some grass. Surely that's putting behind the KTM of Dennis Deutsch, and I think it has. Gap so big Dennis was out of shot. But the Chevy will close in rapidly on the back straight. So all the harassing and moving around in the mirrors from Dennis Deutsch eventually put Michael Bird off enough that he went into the grass. Lap 32, and Ribeiro finally starting to move forward, though I think it may be far too late in the day on lap 33. And the leader must have just gone through the start-finish line, increased the lap number. Ribeiro finally closing in on Voodoo in the IMSA Performance Audi, which is looking even more and more of a handful. He had a slide on then going through that corner, catching some curb. Just passing underneath the underpass, coming up towards the hairpin. And you can see how much the Audi is moving around on the braking and all the corners. Porsche, known for a car that handles quite well, mid-engine layout. Look at the slide there from the Audi, and Voodoo lost loads of grip there and loads of speed, and Ribeiro swings around the outside coming up towards Spoon, and that pushes Voodoo down into 10th. Whether the Audi sustained damage or it's just the fact that it's a monster of a handful in these conditions. Looks like he's on eggs going round Spoon and onto the straight. So going back to join Dennis Deutsch in second place on lap 35, just going around the hairpin. Follow round track to the right before going into Spoon. And lost the rear end. He's in the grass. He's right around. He's spun, going towards the barriers at speed. That was a big impact. And Bird is only 5 seconds behind going into that accident. But I mean, Deutsch was a little bit lucky in that the car bounced back onto the track, pointing in roughly the right direction, so was able to pick up the pace. But that shows you what can happen at any point in these conditions, and positions can be reversed in a blink of an eye. And Bird is through. According to the computer, Bird went through whilst Deutsch was in the wall. I never saw Bird in the background. Bird is ahead. Dennis Deutsch lost the position and loses it again. Another big spin, another big impact with the barriers. So all that effort by Dennis Deutsch to get ahead of Bird, unlikely now he's going to be able to make that place back up. That was some big impacts. That car must be carrying damage. Is he going to the pits? Nope, he's going through the chicane. Looks for a moment then like he was going in the pit entrance. Probably not worth it. If you can keep the car going with just a few laps to go, not worth going into the pits for repairs. And Dennis Deutsch had so many problems then, he's slipping back into the clutches of Mrzeski, and that could change the championship position yet again. Dennis Deutsch now with all sorts of problems in that KTM. Clearly some damage may have been incurred with those trips off the track. And Mrzeski, for lack of a team name, closing in rapidly. If Sims remains in 8th, they'll be okay. If Sims drops back to 9th and Mrzeski can get through against Dennis Deutsch, then BRT will lose 4th place in the championship on what looks to be one of the last laps of the entire season. So Mrzeski really needs to push if they want that 4th place. And Sims needs to ensure that Husjak does not catch him up. Don't know if word will have got to Dominic Mrzeski of how close the championship is. Gap just 2.9 seconds to Dennis Deutsch. Bird is more than secure in second. It's all over for Ribeiro, who slipped back to 11th at the moment. There's no way, unless Bird puts it completely into the wall and doesn't finish the race, that Bird can lose second place in the overall championship. Oh, the potential damage to the KTM and potential handling problems mean that Dominik Majerski has every opportunity, with now just 2 seconds to Dennis Deutsch, to move lack of a team name into 4th place in the championship and demote BRT down to 5th. So whilst ahead, Majerski is closing in on Dennis Deutsch. Back behind, Sims is looking to defend from Husjak. He's pushing. So the gap to Husjak is up and down. Back down to 4.6 seconds. Sims has to keep together. Sims has to keep it together. Can't afford an off like so many of the other drivers are having. You can just see glimpses of Husjak in the background. Very real threat that if Majerski can get past Dennis Deutsch, then Sims will really need to hustle. 7th place will get them 40 points. He could maybe do, that was Eugene. Eugene must have had an off. Sims is through. That'll put Sims into 7th. 7th place will be a good result. It will give them lots more points. 5 points the difference between 7th and 8th. It could make the difference for the championship. And I think there's only 2 laps left to go. Eugene off wildly in the background. Goes right around. Disaster for Eugene in the last couple of laps of a race. And Sims is in a safe position. Eugene looks to be 1 second according to the computer, but I think it'll be more than that. I think Husjak's going to be behind the Ginetta of BRT. And Majerski just needs to push. I don't know if Majerski's aware, but he needs to push. His best option is to get ahead of Dennis Deutsch and do the most he can to get the most points on the board. But it's not going to be over, I think, until the very last lap, the way that positions are changing hands. Back to Sims. Still in front of Eugene, according to the computer. As we pan out the shot, it's Husjak, who's the next car in line. Eugene is back in front of Voodoo, much further down the track. So the computer very confused, not caught up at all. You can see Husjak in the background. And Sims has to be careful. I think Majerski seems unable to make an impression on Dennis Deutsch. It's now 1.8 seconds, but he's running out of time to get the pass done. And I think 7th or 8th will be okay for the BRT. But if Dennis Deutsch has another off, like he did do just a lap or 2 ago, then it'll hand the place straight over to Majerski and lack of a team name, making it a monumental task for Sims and O'Connell of BRT to hang on to that position in the championship. Husjak is pushing and getting closer. It's now 1.4 seconds. Although it might be less than that. You can see him in the background. 38 laps. I think there's only possibly 1 more lap to go. Majerski still 1.8 seconds behind Dennis Deutsch. And Husjak is closing in on Sims rapidly. Now it's 1.5 seconds from Dennis Deutsch to Majerski. Still needs to keep pushing. Husjak now just 0.6. Husjak right on Sims. Looks like they're going to be side by side coming out of the hairpin. The worst thing that could happen to Sims is to have some sort of coming together with Husjak, because if they do lose places, that was really close. If they lose places, they'll definitely lose their 4th place in the championship. So Husjak attacking, coming round Spoon. And the leader will be across the line now. Fernandez wins. Bird is 2nd. Dennis Deutsch will be 3rd. And Majerski got within 0.7 of a second, but didn't do enough. Sims needs to be careful that he does not come together with Husjak towards the end of a lap, because at the moment they will secure 4th place. Husjak goes very wide. Sims does not attack, stays behind. Maybe words got to him. Into the chicane for the last time. And to come around the corner. Onto the start-finish straight. And Husjak will take 7th. And Sims will take 8th. And secure 4th place, I believe, in the championship for BRT. So with that result, that rounds out the first season of GT4 racing, hosted by Apex Online. And to confirm the results of this round, Daniel Fernandez in first place for winning Run GP takes away maximum points and makes it 5 victories out of 6 rounds for first season for Tier 2. Surely Daniel is destined for Tier 1 for next season. And in second place, it's Michael Bird of BRD, who maximised his points opportunities to take the second place in the championship. Dennis Deutsch finished in third, and I think he'll admit he was lucky to get into third, following that major off in just the last lap of the race. In fourth, it was Igor 55 and Dominik Zrzyjewski of lack of a team name. We'll find out in a moment if they did enough to take fourth place in the overall championship. In fifth place, and I think with his best result of the season, Danny Martinez in his Porsche Cayman. In sixth, Stephen Cowie of Revo Sport GB in the BMW. In seventh, it's Uros Husjak of FT Racing in one of the Audis that proved quite a handful in this event. In eighth place, it's Tom O'Connell and Phil Sims of BRT. We'll find out as well in a second if they did enough to retain fourth place over lack of a team name. In ninth place, it's Kubilov Eugene in the Alpine, I think one of his best results of the season, and Eugene finally getting to grips with the Alpine on the very last race, but maybe he'll be able to take that car forward in another season. In 10th place, it's Voodoo and Andreas Ahn of IMSA Performance, managing to wrestle their Audi across the finish line. In 11th place, I'm probably quite disappointed with this result, with Jean-Paul Ribeiro of FACC. His hopes of holding on to second place in the overall championship fading away quite early on in this race. In 12th place, it's Katalin Sazu of V8 Racing, making a recovery drive from that very early penalty handed down by the stewards. In 13th place, it's Manuel Duque and Paul Martin in GoGo Ginetta. 14th was Steve Bezic and Blind Guy Murphy and Beeswax Racing. And then rounding out the field in 15th was João Pedro Castella, Daniel Montero. We had a number of non-finishers tonight, which included Zapata, which will have a bearing on the overall championship table for this first season. Moving on to the championship table, now we've finished the final round. Daniel Fernandez is crowned champion of Tier 2 for GT4 for Season 1, with his 5 victories and 1 second place, giving him an unassailable lead. In second place is Michael Bird, who came second at this event and also took 3 third places at other events to give him a very strong lead in points and take it home. Jean-Paul Ribeiro had a very disappointing finish at Suzuka and finishes in third. Tom O'Connell and Phil Sims of BRT, they did do enough. They have 269 points against the 262 points of lack of a team name. So just 7 points separating the two teams in the final round. Dominik Zrzyjewski and Igor 55 will have to come back on another season and may well be ruining the failure to finish at the Hungaroring. All they needed from that round was 7 points and they would have been 4th place in the season championship. In 6th place, Katalin Sazu moved above David Zapata. David not finishing today, getting no points, and that opened the door for Sazu to take the 6th place on the championship. In 8th place is Daniel Martinez of Porsche Motorsport. Daniel moving up thanks to his 5th place today and moving from 10th to 8th. Steve Cowie slipped down to 9th of Revo Sport GB in the BMW. And Voodoo and Andreas Ahn round out the top 10 in the IMSA Performance Audi. Moving on to the Manufacturers' Championship, Chevy Camaro, who've held the lead all season, finish out in first place. In second and third place, it's a reversal of position. We weren't aware of this as the race was going on, but Aston Martin have done enough to move into second, pushing Porsche down into third. In fourth place, Ginetta held off BMW. In sixth place, it's the KTMs moving right up the table in the last round, thanks to that good result from Dennis Deutsch. In seventh place, Audi. Eighth place was Alpine. Mercedes, and then McLaren. That concludes this first season of GT4 hosted by Apex Online Racing. I'm sure the next season is only just around the corner, so keep an eye on the forums and see when the next date is announced. Meanwhile, GT3 has commenced with Season 5 and we're already into Round 4 at the time of recording. Misano will be taking place on the 6th of October with a start time at 7:30 for qualifying, followed straight away by the race itself across 8 tiers this time, over 300 drivers signed up. Also coming up under Apex Online is the next endurance event on the 24th of October at 9 hours de Provence at Paul Ricard Circuit. It's commencing at 12 o'clock Saturday 24th of October. Beeswax Racing is currently looking at 2 entries into that event with 2 teams of drivers, 3 drivers in each car. Hopefully you'll join us for one of those events or for the next GT4 season. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed the race and the whole season, and if you did, please leave a like or perhaps even a comment in the boxes below.